on this computer. Lovely. All right, y'all. So hopefully everybody's here for this, charting a strategic and effective data journey. And this happens to be Coeffect's very own first virtual workshop. And we're super excited to be doing this in partnership with Emergency Family Assistance Association, who's been one of Coeffect's longtime clients. I'm just a huge fan of what they do. So it's going to be myself, Julie, and Jennifer that will be facilitating our discussion today. And I really think about this as a dialogue. So this is going to take the form of me sharing a few ideas and then really lobbing some questions over to Julie and Jennifer, them sharing about their organization's data journey, which I think is very admirable. And then us all having a couple of opportunities throughout for Q&A. I've got a little bit of sort of just introductory matter. So I'm going to share that here at the start. Here are our learning objectives. So I want to make sure that y'all leave here with an understanding around how your organization's data practice can mature over time, common barriers and enablers to this practice, how this relates to your fundraising and sustainability strategy. It sounds like somebody is maybe not muted. So just give us a check, make sure you are. And finally, a set of potential data moves that you can pick from as you think about what projects are next up for you. So those are some of the things that I'm hoping that y'all will take away from this. And I wanted to acknowledge some of the folks that helped make this possible. So really, EFAA, like you guys have been incredible. So just very grateful for your time and attention and partnering with us. We're pulling some information from the Colorado Evidence-Based Policy Collaborative. So they do some great work. And then I want to just acknowledge some of our promotion partners that I see represented on the call here. So thank you all for helping just bring some awareness to this sort of thing. Okay. So I want to ask everybody on this call, what are you hoping to learn from this conversation? And so you can answer one of two ways. So you can either pick a picture of this QR code and answer on your phone, or just go to this website that I put in the chat. And so I would love for everybody to go in there and just answer in a sentence, what are you hoping to learn from this conversation? Okay, so I'm going to give you all a chance to do that. And I'm going to switch to this screen and we'll start seeing what people are thinking here. Jennifer and Julie, can y'all see the question on my screen? Mentimeter? Okay, cool.
Yes.
This is a really neat tool, by the way, if anybody's ever not had a chance to play around with it. So what are you hoping to learn from today's conversation? Okay, so somebody says, how to better use data. Okay, that's an awesome starting point. I think you're in the right place. What are some other folks thinking? Would love for y'all to go into that link that I dropped in the chat and just answer. And for anybody who is new, who literally just signed on, I'll put it in the chat one more time so you can get to this. So I'm asking everybody, hey, what are you hoping to learn from today's conversation? Okay. Knowledge ships better understanding of how to use data. Great. How about data collection to assist my clients better, to better build learning cultures with partners. I think that this should address some of the culture piece. Absolutely. How can this be beneficial? So we'll talk about the value of data for EFAA in particular. General best practices, we'll touch on that a little bit, but I've got a lot to share afterward. Overcoming barriers, absolutely. Keeping databases clean and relevant, might be able to share some more after this. Different ways of collecting data, different questions and methods, okay. Might be able to touch on that. EFAA's got some good examples. And then hoping to learn how others track data to use it to measure impact. So Jennifer and Julie, hopefully this gives you a good sense of what kind of stories you can tell. I think that many of y'all were already planning on telling some of these stories. We're planning on telling some of these stories.
Yep.
So. Okay. And a quick note. Oh, hey, Amy, good to see you, by the way. Sue, good to see you. For those of you who just joined, so we're just getting started here, just be sure that you are muted because interestingly, Zoom doesn't auto mute us in here. So just want to make sure that that is squared away. Okay, so here's our agenda for today's conversation. So I wanted to start with just talking about EFAA's story, EFAA's data journey. Then we'll talk about, what's the potential value that data offers to a social mission organization, and then specifically what that looked like for EFA. How to navigate change, especially in the last 3 years. I mean, every organization has had to navigate an immense amount of change. How do we do that and still keep our data practice working? And then finally, we'll get, we're kind of starting most general and getting most specific. So finally, we'll talk about what are some of the data moves that an organization can take to advance its data practice. And F is going to do some sort of show and tell and talk about which moves have been most impactful for them. So that's the game plan, y'all. Before I move on, anybody have any questions? Okay, lovely. So we'll do some really quick introductions. So I'm Paul. I'm the founder of Coeffect, and we help nonprofits establish their foundations of their data practice to learn and grow. And so our work sort of fits in within these buckets: impact strategy. So what's our intention around our data practice? Data collection and analysis. So what are the habits for doing this work? Data systems. So what are the systems that we need in order to hold and analyze data regularly? And then building individual data literacy and a culture of learning at organizations. So we'll do consulting projects, coaching projects, and training projects to help organizations put these things in place. So that's a little bit about us. EFA team, Julie or Jennifer, you want to share just a little bit about what y'all do?
Yeah, kick this off. I'm Julie Van Donlin. I'm the executive director at EFA. And have with me today Jennifer Wynn, who is the data monitoring and evaluation coordinator for the agency. So we're going to be sharing our experience a little bit, just to let you know, kind of context of what is EFA. We are the Emergency Family Assistance Association. Since that's a mouthful, we are known mainly by our acronym EFA. And it's an old organization. EFA's been around for more than 100 years, very community-based safety net that actually grew out of the response to the Spanish flu. So EFA's been providing core safety net services. Like we run the main food bank for the city of Boulder, or in the city of Boulder. We have a growing financial assistance portfolio that's really expanded, of course, during COVID. We also provide housing for families with children that are going through homelessness. We have 8 sites around Boulder County that encompass 66 apartments. Not only the buildings, but we have intensive navigation, both for parents and for children, case management, after school activities. We also have been growing as a family resource center. In 2017, we joined the Colorado Family Resource Center Association and are developing our children, youth, and family program oriented to providing all kinds of parental supports and supports for children that are in economic difficulties. We also have expanded from the direct services to individuals to doing classes. We're really looking at kind of building financial health and financial literacy, economic empowerment type classes, digital divide, those types of topics. And then increasingly over the last 5 years, we call it strategic education, not to scare the board, but we are doing more and more direct advocacy on policy and legislative issues in the community. Just to give you an idea, we have about 40 staff and an annual budget of about $6 million. And we are largely locally driven, mainly by private donations, and about 20% local government funding. We're very local.
Awesome. Thanks, Julie.
Yeah.
I think that's a great overview. And everybody, EFA's been working on their data practices. I mean, since I've been working with, I started working with them about 6 years ago, and they were already sort of starting that journey and have made a ton of progress. An important sort of a key piece of this progress is all of the work that Jennifer has done. So Jennifer, I want to give you the opportunity to just give a quick intro of yourself. And I know that you'll be talking quite a bit more throughout the rest of this about what work y'all have done, but just let everybody know a little bit about you and your background.
Hi everyone, my name is Jennifer Nguyen. I am FS Data Monitoring and Evaluation Coordinator. I am the first one in this position. I come with a background in Masters of Public Health and Behavioral Health Changes. And for my capstone, I did data evaluation, and that's how I started my career in this. And I just really love being able to tell a story and just humanize the data, and just for the organization to use it to make create action steps. So that's a little bit about myself.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Okay, so to cue up this first part, so I'm going to ask Julie and Jennifer to tell the sort of story of FS data evolution, just in like broad strokes. To cue this up, I wanted to share. So there's this framework, and I mentioned the Colorado Evidence-Based Policy Collaborative. They have a framework that is sort of actually based in other similar frameworks that exist among federal funders, among philanthropists, and other government agencies that sort of describes a very generic data journey for a social mission organization. So this framework is called in the Colorado Evidence-Based Policy Collaborative, they call this the evidence continuum. And it says, essentially, you start by having some clear concept of your programmatic design. So you have to have a theory of change, a document that says, here are the outcomes we're trying to achieve and why we think the things that we're doing today are going to help us get there. So that's kind of the very start. The second step is just measuring outputs on a consistent basis, data on participation, satisfaction, consistency process. The third step is doing some sort of internal measurement of outcomes, so the meaningful changes that your constituents experience. The fourth step is building some initial sort of evidence, and evidence as a specific term, where we're leveraging data from researchers who have explored similar interventions with similar populations and using that as some evidence of our efficacy. And we might also be doing some of our own sort of internal, very basic experiments to say, hey, here's our impact compared to what would have otherwise happened. And then the fifth step is sort of building causal evidence. This is where you're hiring third-party evaluations that are running some sort of experiment. So you've got some level of statistical control that helps you know, yeah, what we're doing here is making a unique impact that wouldn't have otherwise occurred. So that's like a very generic sort of concept of what a data journey looks like in this space. But the particulars vary quite a bit from organization to organization. And this doesn't tell you how you build that out in actual, it just gives you a few milestones along the way. So with that, I'd love to turn it over to Julie and Jennifer and share just a little bit of the broad strokes of FS data journey as an organization. So I'll shut up and I'll let y'all tell the story, okay?
Okay, I'm going to start and kind of some of the higher level, and then Jennifer's going to get into more of the detail on NFTA's data journey. So when I started at FS, probably around late 2014, early 2015, and it came to a nonprofit, what I found was, FA had a fabulous brand in the community, was very well known for all the services it provided, but the data part was more viewed as kind of feeding the beast for grant reports, uh, as opposed to how effective are we and learning ourselves. So I came to this from a professional background that had a lot of monitoring and evaluation work in it. Um, uh, so I wanted to make sure first that we use the data that we collected. Second, that we collected things in a consistent way around looking at program outcome. Um, and that we were able to capture some of these changes in households. And this is a human service area, so it's one of the more difficult areas to um, uh, do impact work. So some of the things that we put in place in those early years, and one is that we hired Paul, got some technical support, but it was really important to go through each of our program areas and specify theories of change and what we actually were expecting. For example, in our food bank, we basically just measured pounds out. We never really looked at, do we want to do surveys on food? Does that solve someone's food insecurity? Deeper outcome work. So one of and we would become a family resource center. So we are looking at through a lens that includes the 5 protective factors. And I'm not sure what all your backgrounds are, but this is about kind of household well-being. So these measures we had not measured before and had to figure out how to start bringing some of those measurements into our work. So that resulted in first developing a results measurement handbook. So each program would have a theory of change. We'd have specific output and outcome indicators. We also, and you'll hear about our story, but we also ended up funding a full-time position, Jennifer. That's what it took to actually institutionalize a lot of this. And in shifting to look at outcomes, we had a new program that was being funded partly by us and partly by the city of Boulder, called Keep Families Housed. And we actually contracted an external impact evaluation that was extremely important. The results were very positive. And it ended up anchoring a budget line in the city of Boulder for this program. But that was our first effort at a more robust external impact evaluation of a program. So all of this was to move largely to better and more complete outcome measures and better use of the data that we already collected. So with that overview, I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer.
Thank you, Julie. It's also about creating that culture of learning. And with that, there's habits for data collection and analysis. So back then when I first started, I had to start from scratch. It was a brand new position. Knowledge was just everywhere in every different program manager and staff's brain. So I really started to getting to know my colleagues one-on-one, getting to understand their data background. Where did they come from? How comfortable are they? And getting to understand their style. And then from there, putting in some structures in place and having like monthly data meetings, check-ins with the program managers. Now we have clear systems and processes in place, and it's always a continuous improvement process. What now is just me being very flexible and adaptable to my program managers and staff by using a wide range of methods and channels. For example, some staff members really like looking at graphs. Some really like looking at tables, or some like looking at graphs table and having some bullet points with call outs. So it's a whole mixed method approach and figuring out what works best for you when you're collaborating with your staff. And the next one is our data systems. So then we have a lot of data systems. So it was like SurveyMonkey, our Boulder County database where we collect all of our participants' data, Excel spreadsheets using Tableau. Back then, it's really me being able to learn all of the data systems, understanding the pros, the cons, and just really knowing my data. And then now, since I have a better understanding of it and working with the team, is to identify how all these data systems can best work together and streamline that process. And through it is also creating standard operating procedures, instructions for staff to help them. And the next thing that I'll cover is the then with team data literacy. So, starting off, lots of training. It's just really training the staff so that they can better understand the results measurement framework. Like, this is what it looks like, and going through each row, each column. These are the variables. These are the fields. Just getting them familiarized, like with the graphs, what to look for, and building that awareness of why it is important, and looking at outputs. Now where we're at, we still have more trainings. It's a continuous quality improvement process, but it's just really reiterating the why and understanding why it's important, and have a more focus on outcomes and more of that analysis piece, and the impact that we're having. So that's a little bit of the story.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. I hope that everybody's sort of internalizing just the wide range of work somebody like Jennifer does and how crucial a person like Jennifer is on a team like us. Yeah, I was just reflecting as you were both sharing. I had the opportunity to work with Julie and the EFA team, like I said, about 6 years ago. And some of the things that we worked on, creating your organization wide theory of change, just getting that sort of strategy piece in place. We started working on a handbook that outlined here are the different data sources for different teams and the particular outcomes for different teams that they're working towards. But we never got the opportunity. I never had the opportunity, nor was I in the right place to do all of the culture work and the data literacy work that somebody like Jennifer does. So when you're thinking about an organization's data journey, most organizations have a mixture of like internal sort of full-time team member assets, and you'll have some consultants, probably some third-party folks in the mix. There are particular things like the strategy pieces, some of those like fundamentals that I could help put in place, but there are other things like the culture work, really institutionalizing these processes and improving them over time that a consultant like me would not be well positioned to do. And it really was up to somebody like Jennifer, who's embedded on the staff, who can activate those things. So that's just one reflection I'm having based on this conversation that you know, different people in this space are in a position to do some things better than others. It was really cool too to hear that EFA had engaged a third party evaluator at some point in the process, and that's been that has delivered its own kind of value. That was something different than what Coeffect was able to do for y'all. So Julie and Jennifer, thank you for sharing just a high level of the story here. Um, Jennifer, you were mentioning a little bit about, just like all the different kinds of value that you've been able to add to the team. I actually want to next and just go and like talk about that. Like, what kind of value did you want the data work to bring? And so, for everybody's context, I want to just share, sort of one way I often will think about this question. And hopefully, can you all see my screen again? Yeah. Cool. So there's, I kind of think about a few different flavors of value that investing in a data function can bring your organization. So I think here is some of the chunks. One is enabling fundraising or revenue growth. Another is contributing to the product or service. A third is driving internal operations and confidence. And I think that organizations can optimize for some of these things over others, but how your data work looks, like the form that this function takes, will depend a little bit on how important are each of these kinds of objectives to you. So if we're really investing in this primarily because it's driving some of our fundraising or revenue growth, we might be orienting to opening up new government contracting opportunities, maybe driving more media attention, maybe differentiating our organization in a space where there are a lot of other people who are doing similar stuff, and we want to sort of show our unique point of view. If we think about data as contributing to the product or service, it could be the basis of our thought leadership work or policy work. It could be sort of a core product that we deliver to others. So there are some nonprofits where they're part of what they do is they provide a data system for other folks to use. That could be part of it. If we're talking about driving internal operations, a big one is just like having the confidence that we are indeed making an impact. I think we show up in our roles believing in the mission, but at a certain point, you want to know based on objective information whether we are indeed having the impact we think we're making. It can also, really improve operational excellence, or it can support agility, the agility of your organization, the ability to sort of pivot from something to something else that's more impactful over time. But it can't do all of these things equally. You kind of need to optimize for some of these. So I wanted to now ask Julie and or Jennifer, like what kind of value were you hoping to get from the data work that you did? Like if you were to describe, here are some of the primary objectives we were orienting around as we launched into this journey. What were those for y'all?
You know, the why is narrower than the broader results and benefits that we got. So we have a lot of benefits that we see that weren't actually why we did it. The why was pretty narrowly focused on being able to better measure our impact and tell the story of our work. And that was really the core impetus. And so it was kind of internally focused. But in fact, when I look at the benefits that the path we've taken have developed for us, the one thing that I hadn't anticipated was just making our processes more efficient inside of EFA. We have, if we see that we just have more data to make program design and resource allocation choices. Um, but I think where the biggest impact has been outside of the house, where we have a better story to tell, we have more compelling data. I'm often at city council or in, with partner agencies. We're funded by the Boulder County HHS and the city of Boulder, um, to be able to tell what's going on, even just what's going on in the community. Because we're kind of like the canary in the coal mine as the main safety net, particularly during crisis moments. Then we can say, hey, the average household coming through our door makes $15,000 a year and spends 70% of their income on rent. And that sticks in people's minds. So we've been able to use not just here is Mary's story, which is a lot more the individual story that was in a lot of our newsletters and external communications, but back it up with some really impactful, more data centric stories as well. Yeah. So that would be, I think and that in the end, that's gotten us a lot more money, to tell you the truth, from individual donors as well as government agencies.
Yeah, I am so impressed that it seems like you've really been able to use it to position, like use your data to make you more authoritative, kind of
Yeah.
give your organization more legitimacy when you're trying to educate the community around you about the nature of the problems that you're trying to address. And that you can illustrate those problems with timely data too. It sounds like you're really able to collect information on a week to week, month to month basis and paint the picture of what families near the poverty line are going through in Boulder County.
Yep.
Jennifer,
Jen,
would you have anything else to add just around sort of the value or the why, of the data practice at FO?
For me, I think just being able to build that culture of data, accountability, and accuracy, we all just work so much better together and to move the needle forward together to make that impact. And it's a journey. It takes time and it's not linear.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that it sort of enabled some collaboration and like teamwork for y'all. One of the things I've noticed too is that once you get good at just reporting data out as an organization internally, it almost helps you also think about performance as sort of, is the team working well together, as opposed to performance as one person's fault or one person, like it almost helps you sort of depersonalize or take the person out of the problem and then say, okay, we're looking at this system and it's not working as optimally as it could, because the data shows it as such. Now let's fix it, as a team. And I think that just creates for a healthier team dynamic.
yep. I can give you an example from a specific program. We have the families living in our housing have come largely because of economic shocks to them. And we had this data sitting there. We never actually looked at it. And we started to track what their income changes were during the up to 2 years they could stay in an effing apartment. And really, the income increases were minimal. And it wasn't that one navigator was ineffective at, finding support for a household. It was just across the board. So the whole team could get together and say, wait, how do we actually move the needle on income and employment for people that are, so they don't have to come back into, homelessness. And that led to just starting a whole program on employment supports and employment navigation in our housing program that the team could look at based on a data point that, was sitting there. We hadn't really uh, exploited.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I love that y'all have, and that you did something. It's not the day that you did something, which is the goal. Um, Lovely. So everybody else. So I think that now is an opportunity. I want to build a couple of opportunities for Q&A in here. So we've started talking about FS data journey. They mentioned some of the pieces they put in place, why they felt this was so important, and some of the benefits. So we're going to get into more of some of the tactics that they've employed here in a few minutes. But I wanted to just pause here and see, does anybody have any questions for the FA team? And so I will shut up in just a second. But if you do have a question, so chat is fine. or just turn on your video and come off a mute and say it. We've got a small enough group that this is an easy environment for that sort of thing. And I am confident that somebody has a question. There are 20 other people on this call who haven't yet spoken.
I have a question, Paul.
Yeah,
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. It's great to see you, by the way.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear about the different implementation and specific things that went on at that agency. But this is sort of kind of a little bit of a broader question, and I keep thinking about all the folks I work with as a grant writer, right? Like the feeding the beast that we do with this kind of data collection, and the ones that there is no person to go ask for the data. There is no identified person on the staff because they're just not big enough. They don't have the funds. They don't have the resources. They're just not there yet for there to be folks whose job it is to do those things. And this is what I run into with my organizations is I shouldn't be making up your outcomes for you, but we have to submit something. So for the ladies that have gone through this, like what kind of insight can you give just thinking about what if we had to do this process with way fewer people, without dedicated people for this sort of stuff? What if the program person is also the development person? Like, how do you stretch a person's skills and knowledge far enough to implement what is totally necessary work when there just aren't the right people and the right tools to do it yet?
So we started that way, really. So with that pre-Jennifer, that position, the first crack we took at it was really to just look at what data we already collected. And that resided in multiple instruments and areas of the organization. And did as a gnarly spreadsheet on all the things that we did collect. And then so our grant writer could say, you can pick from this list. You don't, we'd still give things that were made up. Oh, it'd be nice to collect this. And then it would never get collected. And when we come to the grant report writing, and because there wasn't someone in charge of that, they were like, oh, some program staff would not be aware that they were, being asked for it. You're not this, we lived through all of that to really make sure that, so one thing is we try to specify. So if you don't have a dedicated person, I would say identify exactly who's going to collect what data when, and it's going to map out across multiple positions. In fact, our program director was the most responsible for program data, and she was probably the least technical person among the program staff. So even drawing it out of a database was a kind of a challenge. So the other thing in a small organization, sometimes you can find some volunteer help in this area. So wouldn't exclude that. Volunteers are great. But I would say just make it simple based on what you already have and make it clear who's responsible for each thing that you want to collect. And then if a grant writer comes and says, here's a whole bunch of outcome indicators that might be interesting, don't put it in the grant unless you actually have it committed to who's going to collect it and how.
And Julie, one really quick follow up on that. For a small team that doesn't have like a dedicated data person, like how, would you recommend a team try and think about like, well, let's centralize this in a person? Like maybe it's the program directors or all sits with them, or is it better to actually say, realistically, we're going to decentralize it with a few different people? Like, and as long as we're clear about that, they can build that into their job. Like how centralized versus decentralized makes sense, before you get to the point of like having a Jennifer on your team.
I think the question is who's got the data. So
Yeah.
it's better to have, the program director, if we have multiple programs, so it's more the program managers that have the data at the level below. So it resides. I would put it like closest to who can actually easily pull it, to tell you the
Yeah.
truth. Yeah, more than anything.
Yeah. Thinking about logistically, like who's closest to some of the data and has access to this on your team, and just being clear, okay, maybe there's 3 or 4 different roles. We just need to be really clear for these 3 or 4 different people. What are they expected to do? What are they expected to collect and look at and that sort of thing?
Yeah, and then also a system for it. So you'd say, okay, I am Excel person. So we just say, hey, just put monthly, you have to fill these 3 data points and you have to fill these 3 data points before you have a kind of system that pulls in and a
Needs that.
Jennifer on staff. And in fact, when we first started to get more sophisticated, we thought all the managers could learn Tableau. That, despite your best efforts, Paul, we thought, let's just hire someone that actually knows Tableau. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I, it has to be realistic of expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's super helpful. And Patrice, I hope that answered or gave you some useful things to think about. And I think it leads nicely into, so Maurice, you put a nice question here in the chat, which is, Jennifer, you mentioned creating SOPs. Do you have any suggestions on how to encourage staff to follow those, help staff to see data integrity as a priority? Her organization has some SOPs, but it found it difficult to enforce, especially with staff changes.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So first, I was the one who created all the SOPs, so I need to make sure that I know how to pull all these data. I know exactly where they're coming from. I have anything that I ask my program managers to do, I need to make sure that I know how to do it. So that's the number one rule for me. And then it's just training and just being there with your staff. It can take one training or it can take more training, but also finding that fine balance of not fatiguing your staff with all the data overload. So what I do is, like, the first time is just an overview, just an intro. This is what it looks like. This is how I'm setting it up. These are the logical steps. And then the next meeting, I will meet and go over, like, hey, I'm going to show you how I'm doing it. These are the clicks, and also explaining, like, why it matters for each metric. And then the next step I would ask the staff, hey, can you try to pull these on your own with these instructions? First, I will sit in with them and watch them do it. And then we'll have questions and we'll just have a discussion. And then we'll do that maybe 1 or 2 more times until they feel really comfortable and just taking pauses and just ask, what questions do you have for me? To give them some space to think about it. And then once they feel comfortable, I will give them a deadline. Like, hey, for action by the end of the month, can you please get this back to me? And then it's just re-evaluating, just really being there and being their support system. That's how I do it. And it has helped staff with data integrity and consistency. It's just your way of continuing to show up to them. And it's a journey. It can be frustrating at times. And so as I started up 2.5 years ago, I'm still doing trainings. So sometimes I have big wins and I mean little wins, and I'm happy with those too. And sometimes there's some struggles and barriers. But at the end of the day, it's part of the process. There's really meeting your team where they're at. I hope that helps.
Yeah, I would
Thank you,
add to that. It's also up to the non-data person, the managers, like the leadership, the senior management, the program managers, to bring that data into their discussions on their programs and whatnot, because it's more like shining a light on how our programs are doing. That then staff that are on the front line, that are the ones that are really entering the data, which is where we do have some consistency challenges. They see, oh, you are all going to be looking at that. And it matters to you. We're going to be discussing it together. And Jennifer's going to talk later about our quarterly, dashboard reviews that are in person with people. But I think if it just lives with just the grant writer, the data monitoring and evaluation person, and the staff putting in the data, that gets put off. I think management, has to step in and show that it's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Maurice, did that answer your question or speak to your question?
It did, thank you. Yeah, I was going to say, especially the suggestion to have a deadline is helpful, because now we have our SOP, like, this is how you do it, but we don't say, like, do it monthly or biweekly. So that's helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I was just observing from what Julie and Jennifer both said, sort of embedded in what they mentioned, like, there is sort of a reporting layer. Like, there are some expectations of reporting that we're going to look at it. And it can be as simple as Julie saying, hey, program manager, I need you to enter these 3 cells on this spreadsheet every month. But for you to do that, that means that somebody on your team needs to be running the process, And so I think having some expectations around regular reporting and actually
Yeah.
looking at data helps reinforce all this stuff. And it won't prevent every data cleanliness issue, but at minimum, it sort of helps verify that the process is still running. Maybe not running perfectly, but people are actually doing it or not. So I found that, just creating some basic expectations around reports we review on maybe a monthly basis, very helpful. Did anybody else have a question right now before we dive into the next topic around sort of navigating change and challenges in this area? Okay, well, then I think I think that it's on to me to ask the next question, and I don't even need to share a slide for this. The question really was for Jennifer and Julie. Would love to hear what some of the barriers and enablers of FS data practice have been over the last several years, especially as y'all have navigated an immense amount of change. I know that COVID brought a huge crisis to the safety net in Boulder County, and then huge opportunities, and now inflation is doing much the same. Would love for you both to just sort of speak to, kind of navigating change and the barriers and enablers you've experienced in this work.
Again, I'm gonna start with the higher level, and Jennifer's gonna dig into the really detailed. Uh, so one of the big challenges we've had is that doesn't rely on our agency. Our database is not our own. It is shared across similar agencies in Boulder County through HHS, Housing and Human Services, which is an unusual arrangement. It does allow us to look across service territory and see a follow-up participant and see what other services they've gotten. Has some advantages, but we've gone from an ETO based database to one that the Boulder County staff designed themselves. And they rolled it out without having finished the reporting requirement or the reporting function. Um, and then now, just in the months like this month, they're sending us over to another database. It's been incredibly frustrating because if you have a data point that you want to add, you just can't go and add it. You have to request someone to add it. So it got to the point where we actually demanded liberation of our data. So Paul has been hired to help. And so we now have all of our data. Um, uh, we go weekly download to an Amazon web service, and Jennifer accesses it in Tableau. And in other agencies, you often have competing databases. You might have that from a HUD grant, they make you use a certain database, or from a state grant. So, the best of all worlds, I would just have our own little database that we could develop standard reports, and it would cover everything we did. Our housing program doesn't fit in because conceptually doesn't fit in the big database. So in many ways, that's been a huge challenge. We have not been able, and now the Family Resource Center Association of Colorado has its own database. We've been trying to get the two databases to talk to each other. They're not speaking. Doesn't look like we can import data from one to the other. So that's been it's taken a lot of bandwidth to kind of deal with that. So if you have your own database, congratulations. Right, Paul? You've been involved in some of these discussions. So I think the other kind of barrier and challenge is just holding the course. It's easy to do a handbook and then just have it sit there and become out of date quickly or not implemented, or so we've really, you have to keep intention on this. And over the years we've gotten better and better at this. So we've added, as Paul mentioned, during the pandemic, we moved to just some weekly pulse points. And now we pull some data very, very quickly. Jennifer's done some focus groups. She's gotten a bit deeper into evaluation. So just to continue that commitment to knowing what your programs are doing is important. It does take some investment, full-time position, a Tableau license, etc. And we were fortunate enough through our fundraising to be able to afford that. And it is well worth it, is all I can say. I mean, it may seem like uh, a big expense to add a staff position, but it's made all the difference, really. Um, the so I'm going to turn on to Jennifer for some more specifics.
Yeah, I'll talk more about like direct program. What really worked for us is investing in a text app. It's where we communicate with our participants. And over the years, we found out that it really works. Like participants really enjoy getting text messages from us, answering back to us. We push out a survey. 75% of our participants indicated that text communication is their preferred method of contact rather than email, letter. So like types of text communication that we do, we send out annual surveys to our participants and we utilize SurveyMonkey with that because some the thing about with text is you want them short, straight to the point. You don't want it super long. You don't want the two-way communication to be really long, especially if your population or group size is really big. So just thinking through all of those things, we do a pulse surveys. For instance, like during COVID, when we were thinking about, hey, would people feel comfortable with reopening our office as a hybrid model? Um, we do course promotion. So that's how we recruit people to join our courses. We also try doing volunteer recruitment, recruitment into our participant advisory committee. We share local resources like during COVID, sharing out where you can get a vaccine and just information with it too. So the participants can make their own decision. Last summer when there was a heat advisory, setting out things to look out for so you don't get a heat stroke. Sending information about taxes, like local resources, SNAP enrollment. We also send out closures and really encouraging our participants to use our food bank. And by indicating in the text message that, hey, if you come and shop here, each visit can save you at least $92. We really want our participants to use the food bank to offset their cost of living and they can save that money to use it for other things that are important. Another thing that works really well are just our monthly meetings with the program managers, monthly metrics, asking the program managers to enter in the data. That way they continue to look at it and then continue to be able to identify patterns, trends, challenges, successes, and being consistent and having the expectations at the beginning. So we are all clear on that and there's no misaligned expectations. And then another thing that works really well is our quarterly dashboards, where now it's like from the results handbook, and then we move it. Then from the results handbook, we translate that into our monthly results dashboard. And then from the monthly results dashboard, we translate it to our quarterly dashboards, which I'll show you where we meet with our senior leadership. In each program, they get to talk about the highlights of their program for that quarter. Barriers, is that different staff, they have different views. They're coming with different backgrounds. So again, meeting your staff where they are. And it takes a lot of internal support, trainings, monitor and evaluation support. I am the only data person, but I lean a lot on all of my teams. I lean on Julie, I lean on our volunteer director, our HR person, our finance, just really working with everyone and getting to know everyone at EFAA. Yeah. I think that's good for now.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you both for sharing. I was just reflecting, one of the things that's always struck me about EFA is that y'all have, you prioritize working with data and you've sustained that commitment. And Julie, I think it's a testament to, I kind of knew from the start that you were that kind of leader because you had a background in it and had seen the benefit of sort of sustaining that commitment over time. But I think that you can't understate that. I've seen a lot of organizations where it might feel like a 3-month push or a 6-month push, and that is helpful, but that alone doesn't bring some of those like long-term benefits that we talked about earlier. Like you need to actually be committed to it and it needs to stay top of mind for a number of years. And then you put the right pieces around it, like the technology pieces, the habits, the reports, making sure there's some expectation, being flexible and supporting your team. But if you don't have sort of that long-term commitment and somebody in the organization who's a champion for this thing. I've seen that be a major, I think.
Yeah.
Jennifer, really quick, can I ask you what that text app was? It sounds super valuable.
It's Community Connects Lab.
Yes.
Cool.
I can put it in the
Yeah, put it in. If you just put it in the chat, and I'll send it out afterwards. I've seen a lot of organizations similarly be pleasantly surprised at how well text messaging works as a communications channel and as a way of getting feedback. And you need to just be thoughtful of how you use it, because people don't want to do a 10-minute survey on their phone, but they're pretty willing to answer a few questions here or there. And so yeah, I definitely appreciate that recommendation.
Well, and it went from doing a one-time a year annual participant survey that we would send out in paper and get a volunteer to enter responses. It really opened up these quick, 4 questions on COVID impacts, or, and then you come with very quick data to inside and outside EFAA, public
Yeah.
forum.
Love it. All right, y'all. So the last part of our discussion, I wanted to actually get really specific. So I'm going to ask the EFA team to share what are some of the most sort of valuable, and we've already started talking about this, but what are the most valuable data moves, the particular sort of like projects or things that they've implemented that they've found to really make a difference in advancing their data practice. So before I do that, I wanted to just sort of share almost a menu of these things, and which ones make sense for each organization are going to depend. And EFA is going to add the EFA team is going to add some additional things on here that I think will be really useful. But let me just sort of set the stage here. Oh, and here's Community Connect Labs. Is this the right page?
Yeah.
This up? Yeah, this looks great. Okay, so just, as we're thinking about like, what are the potential moves that an organization can take in order to advance their data practice? So, I mean, this is the framework that I use as my frame of reference. We're talking about the strategy, we're talking about the habits for data collection and analysis, we're talking about the systems, and then this basis of data literacy and culture of learning. And so there are a bunch of different kinds of projects, kinds of initiatives that support each of these. So under impact strategy, some of these sort of tactics are, okay, we need an organization-wide theory of change. And maybe if we're a team like EFA, it starts organization-wide, and then we need to define these things on a program-by-program basis as well to make them more concrete. We also need to talk about our learning agenda. What are the things that we're really trying to learn that are important for us to learn with data? That's a really helpful frame. So it's not just data as a requirement for somebody else, it's data as a benefit for our knowledge, our wisdom to do our work. Auditing our data sources and uses is one of these. And I remember Julie and Jennifer, we did a big old data audit 6 years ago, and that was the basis for some of that handbook. And then identifying key performance indicators is sort of part of the process I sort of put at this stage, and that sets the stage for then what are those monthly reports? What are those quarterly reports? What data points are we asking our managers to figure out how to pull for us to make sure that we have quality data, and also that we know how our organization is operating? So then if we go into data collection analysis, this is where a lot of what folks will talk about in terms of evaluation sits. So kind of the steps in this include engaging the right people, getting the right voices at the table, figuring out, do we need to design new data collection tools? Do we need to modify existing ones? Maybe the tools that we have are sufficient. And if I know that your team, you came in with the Colorado Family Support Assessment, and that was a major tool that y'all have used, and then you've added things above and beyond that to meet different needs. Then you're doing the work of collecting data. You're maybe accessing third-party data. Maybe you're reviewing results for sure internally, and ideally in collaboration with some community members to give some perspective, people that represent that data. And then you're creating some sort of, I use the term data products as just sort of a generic term for something that we use to present data to other folks. And that might be a one-pager, it might be a presentation, it might be a webinar. These can take a lot of different forms, but ultimately there's some data communication skill that often goes into these things that are, for our own consumption and often for third-party external consumption. So then in terms of data systems, some of the projects here include auditing existing data systems, implementing new systems, or in EFA's case, somebody else is implementing systems and we're along for the ride. Integrating systems. So one of the things we talked about, EFA has essentially, they have a copy of their database. They have a reporting copy of their database, and we plug Tableau into that reporting copy. And so that was a whole process designed to help the team get the right reports, and reports in a way that made sense to them, because we couldn't build those in the original database. So a project like that could fall under integrating systems. Jennifer's talked a lot about creating documentations, process guides, training users. So these are all things that I think of when I think of potential kinds of projects or initiatives under data systems. And then finally, in this last sort of bucket around individual data literacy and culture of learning, there's trainings. Jennifer, you talked a ton about trainings. There's facilitating team-wide data conversations. And I know EFA team, you all do this on a regular basis, and you've got a pretty consistent cadence, like a monthly and quarterly cadence for these. So that's awesome. Integrating data responsibilities into job descriptions and or reviews, essentially making very clear, here are the data responsibilities of this role. And I think that that's relevant even if you have a person like Jennifer, because Jennifer's relying on all the different team leads to do their part. So you need to be clear, okay, this is the part that we're asking you to play. And then engaging the rest of your team, on all these other things. Like, even if you have a person like Jennifer can't do her work in a silo. She's got to have strong partnerships. I know you have strong partnerships with the rest of the EFA team. And so actually being a naturally collaborative person, and then doing the right things to bring people along, like, asking them to be a part of a new sort of data initiative from the very start, that helps other team members come along with you and really be able to collaborate and support, so that when you get to the end of the project, it's something that comes from the sort of perspective of a data specialist, but integrating the knowledge and the wisdom of somebody who's worked with your population, who's worked with your community, and who's managing that program. So that's sort of the wide that's the wide map of potential data moves. And now I would love to turn it over. I think, Jennifer, this might be a you piece. Like, what are the data moves that y'all have found to be most impactful for the EFA team? And I'll stop sharing my screen and give y'all the opportunity to just do a little bit of show and tell about this to illustrate some of the things that y'all have found to be really impactful.
For sure. Let me find my screen. Okay. Can everyone see there's logic model?
Yes.
Did it be bigger?
If you zoom in just a little bit.
Okay. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. Great.
So this is embedded in our results measurement handbook. And when I started the role, another step, I just been thinking, how can we make the results measurement handbook more meaningful? And I incorporate it as part of our onboarding process to new staff. So whenever there's a new staff, I meet with them to just give them an intro to data monitoring and evaluation. And we go through this handbook, but just really focusing on their program. And in here, to make it more robust, we also incorporated our strategic plan into the handbook. And then the goal is to update this on a yearly basis with the team. So I'm not doing this alone. It's always seeking feedback because things are always changing and updating. This is an example, and I also created logic models for all of the programs. So this is an example of a logic model that I created for the food bank, working with the programs team and the food bank manager. First, we identify what is the program goal. So we put it here because this is a good reminder, like, hey, this is the program goal. This is where we're trying to get to from point A to point B. And what I love about logic models is it's a great data visualization. It's quick. You can see how you can go from A to B. So here are our outputs looking at key metrics for activities. And then here are indicators. And then for outcomes, we're looking at the protective factors, aligning it with the FRCA Family Resource Center Association, and just strengthening the family's model. And then these are the indicators. On top of that, I incorporated in parentheses, this is where you can find this indicator. So if our grant writer is going in to look at a logic model, the grant writer will know where this data point is coming from. So it's just making it very clear. And that's the first thing I wanted to show everyone. Let's see. Next one. Okay. So from the results measurement handbook, now we're translating it into a spreadsheet. Like this is another way to look at the same data that we as a team identified that's really important. So this is an example of what our results dashboard looks like. Each tab is for the program, and I'm gonna continue with the food bank program. So this is following the theory of change, whom we are serving, what we do, what we achieve, and aligning these metrics with our funders, the FRCA, and internally. What do we really want to know? Are we making that impact? And here are like the columns that Julie was talking about that are the monthly data requests from our program managers. So this is set up from the start at the beginning, like I need this by the 15th of every month. So everyone, they can anticipate that this is what's coming, this is what's going to be due on the 15th of the month. And I created instructions for the program managers exactly on what to click on. So where's the data source and each click to get to be able to pull the metric that they need. And from there, the next thing that evolved from that is our quarterly dashboard. So I use Tableau to create data visualizations. That's the best way for teams to learn. And bar graphs are a great starting point. Just focus on bar graphs. They're simple. Everybody understands bar graphs. You do not need to make anything complicated or fancy looking. I think my motto is always to do something really well, but start simple. And then you can scale up and automate when you know it works really well already. So this took like iterations every quarterly to improve. At the beginning, the dashboard, we were just focusing on just fiscal year 22 quarter one data. But then for our most recent one, for our mid-year program results, we're looking at fiscal year 23 versus 22 to be able to see that comparison. And to make it more like humanizing the data and being able to tell that story, really putting like some highlights, bullet points, call out. What I really want and I work with the program managers on this. So what we really want our audience to know, the internal staff, is that food insecurity is on the rise in the community, with number of food visits increasing nearly 100%. And then we go into some more details. We have quarterly meetings. So it's a process. Everyone can anticipate a calendar invite soon, and all the programs team will meet with senior leadership. And each program, they have their own dashboard, and they go through it and talk about these highlights. And it's an open discussion. And I think the value of that is the volunteer director could see something that the program team is not seeing or not seeing yet. They can bring in different perspective. And then from there, it's just like having that conversation. What's working? What's not working? What are our action strategies for this upcoming quarter? What can we do differently to do better? And then another thing I wanted to share, this is what Julie touched on earlier, on getting those immediate numbers. So this came out of COVID. This does not exist before. It's weekly data that we pull, and it's real-time data. It helps us to be more responsive, especially for program managers and crisis. And it helps us identify immediate actions. Like Julie would be like, oh, do I need to go and get more money right now? Like that type of stuff. And then the next thing I want to show. So this is our 1-page fast facts year in review. It's an internal document. So with data, even though it's a lot of programs data, but it's also thinking about how can I make something that's useful and meaningful that our grant writer can use, our volunteer person can use. So this is a one document report highlighting very like high level key indicators, and everyone at EFA uses this throughout the year. And then everyone can anticipate the next one to be coming out soon as well. Oh, this is our monthly dashboard. So this is what Paul helped us create. It's just to really link our internal communication and be able to share what's happening all at EFAA. So it started off with just sharing this dashboard to our board, and now we're really linking it to sharing it out to our committee members and also staff. And then Julie does a great job like putting in key updates that you can read, and we've got the graphs to connect the dots. And then the last thing I want to end on is our Boulder County Community Wellbeing Dashboard through the hard work of our policy and outreach coordinator, Hannah Fernandez Frey, working closely with Julie and our strategic education committee. And this is just it's a big infographic. It's a 2-pager. We have it both in English and Spanish. And it highlights the key community conditions that are impacting families who are earning lower incomes in Boulder County. So this is really linking it to the external communication. And when this was published, we utilized the text app to push this out to our participants, because with data, we just don't always want to ask participants, like, just give us data all the time. We want to share it out and like show them that like we are really listening and we are taking your feedback seriously and we're doing something about it. That's my show. I'm done.
I love that. Jennifer, I was just going to reflect and mention you do such a nice, y'all have done such a nice job of just doing some basic data visualization. And that I think is crucial. Not everybody needs to see charts and graphs, understand data, but a lot of people do. That helps make data more accessible. And so if you're trying to sort of engage program managers or staff broadly around data, just being able to do some basic data visualization is important. And it doesn't need to be like the most complicated, nuanced, or perfect thing ever. Even a few bar graphs with an appropriate comparison point can show so much. Like that dashboard that one dashboard, I think it might have been the quarterly tool that showed for the food bank, like, oh my gosh, there's an increase in every single metric from FY22 to FY23. That is so clear. So having appropriate comparison points seems pretty crucial. Let me check out the chat. Okay, Mary, I'm sorry. Is Tableau available to nonprofits? Why Tableau and not Google's platform? I really like these. It's clear to help and understand the story. I was going to say, Jennifer or Julie, you want to speak to Tableau availability? I can also answer that, but if you want to take a shot first, that's totally cool.
Jennifer, I can't remember if they have a nonprofit rate. They might. I don't know. But as I said, we first started out thinking all program managers could learn Tableau. So we bought like 6 licenses or something.
Wow.
We just renewed 1 license for Jennifer. So you can tell the cost. What was it? It's not.
It's like 2,500.
When we started, but what is it for one now?
Over one right now, it's 653.
Yeah. So just to give you all an idea.
Yeah. So Tableau is an interesting one in that
Per year, yes, per year.
you have to, there is a sort of free public version, but there isn't sufficient data security around that. So it's not really helpful for a lot of organizations, unless the only reason that if you're only accessing public data that's already in the public domain, then the free version's fine. But as soon as you start, kind of accessing internal to your organization data, that's where you have to pay, because they have to be careful about where that the underlying data is hosted and who has access. So that's something with Tableau. Google Data Studio is a tool that I've used in the past, and it can connect to some other data sources, and the security is okay. I think that there are some, like if you were a HIPAA covered entity, you can't use Google Data Studio as far as I know. However, if you're another organization, you want to just get a start on some dashboarding, it could be a fine tool. It's just not as robust as Tableau. And so the interesting thing that we had gone through a big project with EFAA, we ended up selecting Tableau, 1, because the county had already used it on similar data, and 2, the underlying data structure is fairly complicated. And there's actually a lot of data underneath those dashboards that we needed to parse. And so for better or worse, we needed something as powerful as Tableau to do it. but it's something that I think a specialist really needs to interface with. Like Jennifer, I am so impressed with what you've done because I've created some of these things at Tableau too, and it's not particularly easy. And I wouldn't ask like a program manager or program director to build it up from scratch.
I think I have to thank Apple for allowing that resource so I can become a Tableau specialist. It was a whole course that I had to take, and you go through these classes, certificate, and I'm still learning Tableau. So it's a steep learning curve, but you just have to use it all the time to get used to it. I recently got an e-learning license, so it's just to continue to learn so you can sharpen your skills. Prior to Tableau, like what's affordable, using Excel. You do not need to be fancy. It's just like
Yep.
using Excel or using Word doc and just inserting those charts, getting used to how to do those. And then that skill is transferable.
Yeah. And I would mention too with that, Excel or Google Sheets is a perfectly fine starting point, because you create all the basic data visualizations you want there. The main difference between creating an interactive dashboard in an Excel or Google Sheets, like creating a dashboard like we saw, and creating one in Tableau is Tableau will stay connected to the database and will
Right.
always refresh with live data from that database.
Right.
When you create it in Excel or Google Sheets, what you're going to do is you're going to have to take some underlying data. If you've got a database, you've got to export a report and copy paste into a tab. And then you've got your new data. So it's the data freshness, if that makes any sense. Like, how easy is it to get new data to feed the chart? That is the thing that a Tableau solves for. But if your process is, hey, we're going to start doing something quarterly, okay, like copy pasting some reports into tabs on a spreadsheet and then summarizing them in Excel, that's totally fine. So don't discount the value of Excel or Google Sheets. And even in Google Sheets, there are some ways of like, well, if you're using Google Sheets on a regular basis, you can connect multiple of them and summarize them, on a chart, and that solves the copy paste issue. But data freshness, as I've described it, is sort of one of the big things that makes people think, oh, I need a tool like a Tableau or another business intelligence tool. So, cool. So I think we're at a point where we have plenty of time for questions, or at least we got 10 minutes, for other questions for Jennifer and Julie. I can ask other questions, but I would love to hear if anybody else has other questions about what they just shared or about anything we've talked about today. And again, I am sure that somebody has something. Don't let me down, team. There has to be a question for Jennifer and Julie out here.
I have another question, but I'm also putting my 3-year-old down for a nap, so it could get great.
Okay.
I was
Go
just
ahead.
curious if y'all have gone through experiences with any sort of like rapid change method where you're trying to gather quick data to be able to make changes quickly over time to see impact in a faster sense than what we typically can do with a lot of the outcomes that we're trying to track for these social problems. I was just curious if there's any suggestions about what kind of pace to go when you're doing things like intentionally faster than the average bear.
I guess from my perspective on that question, was really came how frequently do you actually need the data? Because like it's a cost to pull and put reports together, just time and effort. But when COVID hit, we needed really fast information on how many people were getting rental assistance, how many people were coming to the food bank. So that was our quick. So we didn't try and collect all of our data quickly. We just pulled maybe like 5 or 6 data points out on a weekly basis that we could collect on a weekly basis. Like from our appointments, we have appointments plus for scheduling appointments. We could pull that out weekly. So fast data that is great, but you have to be able to put it in quickly. So, what typically our kind of case managers, navigators have a month to fill up all their program data. And so we're usually a month behind on program information. So you have to pick those fast points quickly. Then the other thing on quick data is on the text app, because you can push a quick question out and get an answer back, within a day. We're doing one right now, just getting ready to do one now on raising the minimum wage. And so we're doing, we need a quick pulse that we can then, when we go into these meetings, say, hey, the average, this is the wage structure of people that come to services. And so, yeah, if that answers your question.
Yeah. I was just going to mention, Julie, that exactly what you said about the text app. I think that there are some of these kinds of things that you can pull off quickly. And there are many of them that take a long-term time investment, but you can pull off a text message survey. You can pull off, even just saying, hey, I'm going to try and call 20 of our clients. Hopefully we're going to get 5 of them on the phone. We're going to ask them 2 questions. Like there are, those are a quick qualitative and a quick quantitative method for getting some feedback. And a little bit of feedback can often be better than none. But, you kind of need to be set up to do that. Like for that tech surveys, like you'll need to have people opted in. You need to have a provider and you'll need to have people opted in to know to expect text messages from you to enable that sort of thing. So, I would just say that that's one other thing to think about. If you know that there are going to be some really quick turnaround, like opportunities for feedback or leveraging data, you might not know exactly what that opportunity is, but you might know, hey, we need to sort of set some expectation in place, have that text, capability, for example, or whatever, kind of makes sense for the organization that you're working with.
And else just one, just one last comment on the text app. We had the exact same experience as we did with Tableau. So we kind of bought the text app, and then we didn't really even use it the first year because it was like, wait, who's going to actually do this? Who's going to be trained in the system and how to set up the questions? And, that first getting all the phone numbers in and cleaning out the phones. And just like, okay, well, I'll kind of do it as a group. And then that didn't go anywhere. So I think, and ended up being Jennifer that's doing the text app. So, yeah.
Another thing that I would like to add is the importance of having historical data, like having some key metrics that you look at. So, for example, for a housing program, we have key metrics like, I don't know, less than 10, and we track that historically by fiscal year. So by doing that, you can quickly pull it out and just look year over year and identify the trends, patterns. Are we improving? What's going on? And then go back to the team and seek more insight.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Jennifer. So, and everybody else, thank you for posting some questions in the chat. So Amy, let's go to your question next. Any ideas, thoughts on strategies to track qualitative data?
Yeah. I'm going to have Jennifer tell you about our experience recently with focus groups. But EFTA has always been very strong on the qualitative storytelling side of what we do. And that's actually, like participant stories. It's actually driven a lot of fundraising. It's, we do a newsletter. So the question is, what do you mean by qualitative data or is it so when we've tried to use mixed methods in, for example, in that impact evaluation was a mixed method. It had household surveys and it also had some focus groups. And then Jennifer, if you want to tell your most recent experience with focus groups in housing.
Yeah. We started doing some focus group with our kids club and also interviewing the parents. Just having some questions less than 5 and asking, just when you're thinking about questions, you don't want to start out with something still hard. You want to start with something kind of easy, warm them up, and then go in, but also remembering what's the most important question that you want an answer to will be at the top. So there's a strategy to that as well. And then with focus groups or surveys, I incorporate a mixed methods approach. So always having not just all quantitative items on there, but also having a qualitative component too. And then from there, like with our focus groups, being able to identify those themes, being able to code out those themes. And you have to go through not like 1 or 2 rounds of like coding and getting out themes, and then leaning on your team and asking other people to look at it, because you want to really make sure that you're objective and you're not putting extra meaning into qualitative data. Um, yeah, I hope that kind of answered your question.
And actually, Jennifer, I wanted to just piggyback on this because I have a template for this sort of thing. So to sort of illustrate, can y'all see my screen?
Mhm.
Awesome. I'll send this out afterward. But like, this is a template I've often used and shared. Like, hey, if we're gonna, do interviews or focus groups, let's say, okay, well, here's the questions and here's our learning objectives, like the thing that we're trying to get after. And then, so coding is sort of a
Mhm.
process of assigning meaning to responses. And so you can actually sort of at once you look through the data once, you're typically developing, okay, well, what are the codes? Like, what are the piece of meaning that we're assigning to this? And then this is the cheapest way to do this, which is to say, okay, we're going to dump all the responses in a spreadsheet. And each response to the question is going to get its own row. So person one, here's the 5 questions they answered, here are the 5 rows. And then we're actually going to name like the codes or the piece of meaning that we are starting to see come up over and over again, and tag them just in a way like this. And then you can sort of record some other notes in here. There are many more sophisticated ways to do qualitative analysis. I find this is just something like this is probably the easiest starting point. And you can also sort of do it in like a Word document or in a Google document. But actually putting it like this allows you to then sort of count those codes. And I'm gonna filter everybody that mentioned capacity. Okay, here are those responses. So that's an easy starting point. Yeah, Amy, I'll share that with you afterwards so you can take a look at that and use it as a basis for your own work.
That is great. That is something very similar to my process as well. Qualitative data is time consuming, but it's so worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so glad that Amy mentioned that, because when we say data, I always think it's both more qualitative and more quantitative. But some people naturally only think about quantitative data. And if that's you, you're kind of leaving some opportunities on the table, because qualitative data makes a huge difference, especially for smaller, newer teams that are early in the process. Okay, so there's one, Mary, I'll get to one of your, Samantha, I'll share these slides. Mary, I'm going to get to the first of your 2 questions and then we'll wrap if that's okay. She said, my org is not where you're at. How can I sell the CEO and managers on training? Jennifer, Julie, any thoughts there?
Not knowing your manager, the CEO, which is, that's a good question. Actually, I think it's so specific to an organization because, I think starting, as Jennifer said, simple, which is, are we telling our story well? Because that's really in everyone's interest. Are we really telling our story well? The other thing I think for managers to hear is that, the world's expectations have gotten higher about being able to like report on what you actually do. If you're getting money from, particularly if you're getting money from like foundations or um, HUD, or, the expectations of being able to report outcomes has risen. And so you will be asked to figure that out. I also think it's beyond just data. That if you just focus on data, I would say focus on the next level up, which is telling our story, aligning our resources to what's working. Um, uh, yeah, maybe showing examples. So I think people, from other organizations, but we'll be happy to share anything you've seen today. And it's been a process, as I said. I mean, we still run spreadsheets for things. It's not all beautiful Tableau stuff, and we still have data audits that show that this staff member didn't enter any data in this month. So it's not all perfection. It's an ongoing process.
Yeah. Julie, the only thing else I was going to add, because I'm nerdy like this, every time I'm talking with a client about a project, I try and create like the logic model for that. Like, what are the outcomes for us as a team for engaging this project? So Mary, I might just say like, okay, what are the changes in knowledge, skills, attitudes, or behavior that are important, that we think like our managers believe are important to our team? And then aligning, if we're going to do some kind of training or some kind of coaching the data area to those, like being able to say, okay, here's how I think this is going to, move the needle in this way for our team. So I think just trying, it's got to be a little bit of an art. You do have to name like what are the changes we're hoping to get to in engaging in this thing or investing in this area. But hopefully some of the discussion today has helped you think about some of those things. And like that one slide that I talked about some of the different elements of the value proposition, you can use that even as like, those are some of the things that your managers probably care about. And now the task is let's make the argument of how some data training would help us get to some of these things. So, and I think that that's actually a really good thing for us to sort of move to wrapping up on, because there are a few next steps I think are relevant here that I wanted to make sure to share. Let's go back. Okay, can you all see slides on my screen now?
Yeah.
Okay, so the first thing that I wanted to just mention is Jennifer and Julie, could you share, how folks can continue to support or get connected to EFA? Because you guys have been just awesome in this training. I'm sure there are some folks who would love to learn more about your mission and or find ways to support you. What would you tell them?
Yeah. So on the how to support EFA, we are a community-based safety net in the midst of just a massive amount of demand from people that are having a hard time making ends meet, largely because of inflation. So if you're in our community, linked to our community, please get the word out. We have a website, EFA.org. I can put a link in the chat, and we're always looking for volunteers for run a food drive for us. Of course, money. We also have an event on April 30th. I will. I may have to send this to Paul. I don't think I have it quite in
Send
my
it to me, I'll send it out.
I just added in the chat.
Oh, you're awesome. So
Okay.
first, everyone needs a Jennifer is all I can say. It's a friend fest in Boulder. Tickets are $25, a very low price point to enter. You get a couple drinks. You'll hear about what we do in the community. You'll meet some fun people. It's got music, food trucks. So if you're around Boulder on April 30th, Sunday afternoon, come by. Jeff will be there. And then Jennifer, I think there's also some technical support and sharing that I'm sure you would do if anyone wants to dive into deeper on that.
Yeah, I'm always happy to share the work that I'm doing, to share examples, to talk through things. I also am part of a data support group, and then I'm part of like Paul's data group as well. Networking is just so important. So yeah, I'll put my email address here. So feel free to reach out, ask any questions. Always happy to support.
Awesome. Awesome. Lovely. This sounds like such a cool event. Thank you for sharing that. Other thing I was going to share. So I'm going to share some resources in a follow-up email. So I actually there's this slide in the slides, and I've got a bunch of I try to actually sort of aggregate a bunch of Coeffect's free resources here. So I've got a data fitness quiz that I think I've intended this to be useful in figuring out like, hey, what's your starting point? Data literacy guide, a guide to leveraging small evaluation grants, other stuff that I've been involved in and created over the years. So I'll share that out. All this stuff is free, easy for you to access. I'll include the qualitative coding example here too. And then the last thing I would mention is that one of the things I'm trying to do much more of this year is provide individualized data coaching for folks. And it's accessible. It's not particularly expensive. And I found that it's been, really fun for me and also really impactful for sort of programmatic leaders and folks who are maybe not the data person, but have some data responsibilities to just do this work as efficiently and as well as they can and shortcut their learning process. So if you want to talk anymore or learn more about that, just follow up to my email and then I'll share some details and we'll get on the phone and we can chat and see if it makes sense. So I think that's it. I just want to thanks again, Jennifer and Julie. So grateful for your time today. Thanks everybody else for joining us too. This was so meaningful to have 20, 28, 29 people joining to hear about our data journey here. So So thanks again for your time. Have an awesome afternoon, everybody. And thanks again, y'all. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Bye, everyone.